Welcome to the Disciple Making Leader Podcast, your resource for exploring the world of disciple making and leadership within the church. Discover Jesus' strategy for raising up leaders, growing the church, and multiplying a movement. Let's jump into today's episode and explore the power of a disciple making leader.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Disciple Making Leader Podcast. I'm your host for today, Ben Borgman, Executive Director of Disciple First. And, it's super exciting today, again, really carrying on a conversation from a previous episode that we've had about vision and really crafting a vision, but also casting vision. And I think it's really critical as we're at Disciple First, we're trying to really encourage and empower you as a leader to make and multiply disciples like Jesus. And in that, I think it really takes setting clear, inspirational vision that you can really get your people behind. And again, we'd have a lot of conversations about that. So super excited about this conversation. I think it is very practical. I think it hits where a lot of leaders are. And again, we have a couple of our, I guess I would say, our consistent contributors and two guys that I really have the pleasure of being led by and friends with, and can say they do a really good job of casting vision that someone would want to follow and that is inspiring, but also tangible. We got Pastor Craig Etheredge.
All right, there. Man. Thank you for not saying old and grizzled. I thought
I was just going to say amen to that, but I better keep my mouth quiet.
Old and grizzled,
seasoned, well seasoned. And it's sitting out in the hot sun.
That's right, leathered.
No, Craig, never would I say that, ever.
Thank you.
And we got Glenn Underhill over on the other end of the table across from me, longtime friend and great disciple-making leader.
Amen.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
He called me old and out in the sun, and he showed you some love.
He just was trying to keep the honor bar high.
I owe Glenn money, so I got to.
Oh, now I know.
No, he owes me a Topo Chico, which, by the way, you don't have.
I've got this just regular kind of off-brand water. It's not the fuzzy, lemony, limey Topo Chico water.
Very boring. Boring,
very boring.
Clear, plain, still water.
Womp, womp, womp.
All right, we got to do something about that next time.
Maybe next time, Ben.
Yeah, definitely. So
just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Go to the grocery store before you come back.
If you want us back, you're going to have to bring Topo Chico.
We need to get Topo Chico, any sales reps out there that listen to the Disciple Making Leader podcast.
Hey, name, image, and likeness. I'm all over that.
We could go for a nice Topo Chico branded cooler in here that's always stocked.
Hey, I love that.
Anyway.
Hey.
All right, well, let's get in. So again, today we're going to talk about casting vision. We've already had a conversation about crafting really an inspirational, how do you take inspirational, incremental, and put it together for an intentional vision? And now, how do you communicate that? That's really what we want to get into today is once you have this vision that people are going to be passionate about, hey, this is inspired. I'm confident in this and we're ready to move forward. How do you actually go about casting that? And again, I can't count how many leaders we've talked with in the last year or two that really struggle with I have this vision, I'm passionate about it, this is the direction we need to go, but I really don't have confidence in how to communicate that. And that's what really we're going to talk about today. So Craig, just kind of help us walk through that real quickly, maybe a pattern or a tool that really can help them understand, okay, this is how you cast vision, just to make it super simple.
Absolutely. I've done it wrong many, many, many times. So I guess what we have to offer here today is just what we've learned over the years of casting vision. And I will just reiterate what we said in the last podcast that, casting vision is really important. It is an essential tool in the leadership tool belt. And
can you say that one more time?
Yeah. I was hoping that Keith could just kind of, blow.
No, what you see, what you get. We don't edit these, so what you may hear, no telling what you'll hear. No.
Yeah, an essential tool.
Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. In the leadership tool belt. And it's essential. And here's the deal. If you're a leader and you're trying to move your people forward, trying to move the organization forward, then they got to know where they're going. They have to know where you're headed, what direction are you setting, and that's through casting that vision really, really effectively. And so let me just say one of the rookie mistakes I think that a lot of leaders make, I certainly did over the years, is just, man, I feel inspired that Sunday morning, and God's put this, I've worked on my sermon. I'm going to just drop this huge vision casting element in my sermon, and people are going to, it's going to be shock and awe, man. They're going to love it. They're going to fall down. They're going to be, you're the best leader ever, and let's go, and that kind of thing. That's actually probably the worst thing you can do, is just to go straight to the pulpit and declare it, over
like
the
going
people.
Nuclear.
Yeah. And they don't know what's coming, nobody knows. And so what's going to happen is, in that situation, if they hear something new, this is where we're going, something like that, the people are immediately going to turn their head over along their pew or to some trusted leaders in the room to see if they're nodding in agreement or they're in shock, right?
Yeah.
And all the after conversations after that sermon are going to be, did you know about that? Did you know about that? All that's what's going to happen. And so that's why I'm saying that's actually a bad thing to do, because what you want to do is leverage the influence of the leaders around you when you're casting vision, so that they are nodding in agreement and saying, yes, we've been a part of this. We've been a part of the development of this. We believe this is the right thing to do. And that assures all the people that this is the right direction to go. So I would propose a pattern when you're thinking about casting vision.
Okay.
So think of it like, we call this cascading communication. Think of waterfall cascading down. You're going to start at one level and go down to another level, then down to another level. Another thing you could think about is kind of picture a wedding cake that has multiple levels. And so you're going to start at the top. And the top is what I call the tribal chiefs. There are tribal chiefs in every organization. They may or may not have a title. They may or may not be paid. Most of the time they're not. But these are the people that have tremendous influence. They've been there a long time.
I like to think of them like, people may not remember the E.F. Hutton commercial, when they speak, people listen.
Yeah,
but these are these E.F. Hutton types.
That's right.
They don't necessarily always, sometimes even have like titles.
Right.
But man, when they speak, people are listening.
And
they carry
when
a weight of influence.
When you and I served in Oklahoma together, it wasn't hard to identify those guys.
No, it's not.
Maybe in other churches it may take a little bit more time. I've been in other churches where it took me a little bit more time to find those people. But they are there. And they're not going to show up and wave at you necessarily. You're going to have to discern who those people are. But I would say you start casting the vision with that group, because that group then will leverage their influence to support it. Right. And if they're not on board, I want to know right at the very jump.
Yeah.
I want to know that I'm going against the grain of where they are, because they could submarine it later down the road anyway. And I want to try to win them over or draw them into this vision as soon as possible.
And I think one thing I've heard you do and watched you do with tribal chiefs specifically is, with this cascading communication, you're actually asking them questions. Like, the vision is not fully formed when you're at this point in time. So you're even letting them speak into it to get their buy-in. And I think that's the genius of starting with them, is not just to get them to agree with it, but where they actually own it.
Right.
And I think you do a really good job at that.
Yeah. So you can say, this, I got this in my heart. I think this is the direction we want to go. What do you think? And where would this go wrong? And what would concern you about this? And what would excite you about this? And you're inviting them in to tinker with and give input to the vision as it's being developed. And then after that, you would probably move down a step to what I would call, if you serve in a church staff, then that was where you would bring the staff in. You want them to also be able to give some feedback, give some contribution to shaping this. Maybe not the whole thing, but like, hey, so what excites you about it? What concerns you about it? What can we do? Because you want their buy-in as well. And then the next one down from that is probably where you're going to move into, like a lot of churches will have deacons or committee leaders and so on. And probably at that point, in the first two levels, the tribal chiefs and the staff team, you probably want them involved in shaping it. Probably once you move beyond that to these larger groups, you're probably going to be saying, hey, this is where we're going. And you've got those tribal chiefs standing there with you. You got your staff behind you, and they see, hey, we're a great united front. And so you're casting vision to them of where you're going. And then you go from there to probably group leaders, like youth group leaders, adult group leaders, kid group leaders, maybe men's or women's group leaders, if you have that in your church, that would be another level you would cast it to. And then to all volunteers, you might cast to all those who are serving, which would be a large percentage of your church. And then you finally get to the church. Then you get to the Sunday that you're gonna preach it on Sunday. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying don't do it first, right? Yeah. Because at this point, if you go through all these steps, tribal chiefs, staff team, deacon committees, group leaders, ministry leaders, once you get through all these people and then you preach on Sunday, they've all heard it before.
Yeah.
And what's important is they need to hear it multiple times for them to continually have buy-in to it. And so then when somebody sits in a pew and they hear you say that and they start looking around and their talk after the church service is, did you know about that? Oh yeah, we've been talking about this for months. Oh yeah, he talked to this group and this group. We're all bought in. Well, then everyone feels comfortable that this is where we're going because they have the unified support of trusted leaders already in the church. And so I found that if you circumvent this and you just go straight to the preaching on Sunday, you're just going to undercut all that. And actually those people will kind of inadvertently work against it because they'll say, well, I didn't know anything about it. I guess that's him just on his own. He didn't ask me about it. And so not that they would maliciously do that, even though some might, but you're not winning, you're not pulling them on your team.
Yeah.
And that's the role of the leader is to create buy-in as you cast this vision.
I was going to say this too. I think as you were talking through it, and I've watched this done over and over in the 24 years we've been together, you do this, or even like from when you do it at your level, but then I take it down to my level, we're still doing this exact same thing. Like when we made some strategic changes in areas and within the department the area of which I give leadership to, we've utilized this strategy and we stick to it. But I was going to say to that point too is, sometimes people when we've been consulting with people, they say, well, hey, they push back a little bit. This takes too much time. It takes too much energy. And I'm like, hey, if it helps to move it down the court, why would you not want to? But secondly, I think people actually appreciate some time because they feel like then a decision was not made in a snap way, but it's had time to percolate and to work its way through the dough, so to speak. And then that leaven rises up out of there and it becomes a beautiful thing, not a, hey, we just made a decision last week and now I'm coming to you and blowing everything up and nothing has been really thought through.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of wisdom not only on it from that the approach of, so when you get ready to cast it out to everybody, there are lots of people, but it also I think the other wisdom is it gives time.
Yeah.
And I think that's so needed in change management sometimes, is that sometimes time is a good thing, especially in church, because you people need that to see that it's not just been a rush decision.
Yeah, no doubt. We've said it before. People in churches and in planes don't like sudden moves, and that time element of letting it trickle out and letting those sidebar conversations happen, and you've got your key leaders and then your deacons and others are all supporting that will help the church get to unity. And listen, if it's a big casting a big vision or a major change in your church, like we changed our church name and things like that.
And how long had that process, like going through this? I was just about to say that. How long did that was that was about 2 years when the initial conversation started, and it worked itself through the process to where we finally came to the church with it. Yeah,
and let me tell you, when we did, it was like no big deal. It was like old news. Mm-hmm. Like people are going, oh yeah, I've known that for a while. I mean, it was beautiful. There was unity, and it was not hostile. And then I've seen other guys, do it at really fast for the sake of speed, I guess, and they pay the heavy price on the backside of division and people not feeling valued and along the way. So I think the time element of this is probably in proportion to the drastic nature of it, right? Yeah. If it's a big deal, then you're gonna have to chart this out and give lots of time and have lots of conversations to do that. If it's not super big, then you could probably zip through this pretty quickly.
Yeah, like long-term impact. Somehow figure out how impactful is this decision or this vision or this directional change that we're making. How impactful long-term is this? Yeah. And that may dictate how slow you go. That's a really
and we've done this now for several things. I talked about name change, but we also created our Cross Creek Network with our church planting strategy. That we went through this process of involving people on the way, and what we got is so much support that now our people give so generously to our church plants and celebrate, and they're so happy about it because we allow them in. And so this pattern is a very effective, proven pattern that I would recommend all leaders to utilize.
Yeah, and again, the power is the leaders, you give time, but you also give an opportunity for buy-in too. I think that's really the power of this. It's not just a communication strategy. I really think it's great for a church because we are supposed to be a family. We are supposed to, it's not you're dictating things. Now you are leading where we can't, but it's really, hey, you're getting buy-in and acceptance and improvement. So I'd say definitely as you're casting new vision, leader, just really be patient. This is really a powerful pattern to follow, and I like it because you said wedding cake, so that's making me a little hungry here. And again, one real quick thing, shameless plug for your book, Bold Moves. If you have it or you don't, if you don't have the book, we have that at disciplefirst.com. in our web store, but in chapters 5 and chapter 6, you discuss really the importance of casting vision and this pattern of cascading vision. So it's right there in there. So if you have it, go grab it off the shelf. If not, we'd love for you to purchase a copy at disciplefirst.com. But you're talking about wedding cake now. We're kind of getting close to lunch, and who really doesn't like a good sandwich? I could go for a good sandwich right now.
That's right. And a good vision casting sandwich.
So you got this tool. This is what you call it. This is a great tool for you to kind of put your hands around this, leaders. It's a vision casting sandwich. Craig, what are you talking about?
So I was hoping it would be a vision casting Chinese food.
No, there's no buffet on this one.
No buffet.
Not for you. But here's when you think about, okay, so what do I say when I'm casting vision? You come up to the night, right? And you're going to cast this vision, and your heart rate's racing a little bit, and there's some adrenaline surging because you don't know how they're going to respond. Yeah. Right. That's natural, by the way. That's part of leading, right? Is that internal tension of I'm going to cast this vision, and I think you can see all biblical leaders have had that. But I try to follow a simple pattern, kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end, or the two pieces of bread and the meat in the middle. So the first part of it is really coming back to what God has called us to do. Reestablishing what God's command is for you. We come back to the Great Commission, man. We just always come back to and passionately talk about how this is what Jesus called, or multiplying our to the ends of the earth. This is clearly God's call. So you're really leveraging Scripture, really calling them back to the essentials of what is needed, what God's command is. And you need to establish that once again, really, really, really hard and fast. And so some of that is storytelling. Like for us in the past, we've talked about our history and our heritage and what the people were dreaming when they planted this church, and I got found this great picture of our church in the early days, and there's a pastor standing out on a field and he's pointing. And I need that picture blown up and put somewhere, because I put all kinds of words in his mouth. He could have been saying the bathrooms over there. I don't know what he was saying. But I say, man, just think about what he's saying, and they gathered in this house and they dreamed of a church that would shape the nations. We get the gospel in the nations. And, and then I talk about what God's been doing in our church, and we've been seeing that come to reality. And I mean, I just say it now, I get goosebumps. It's true. It's not just inspirational, it's true. And what Jesus dreamed of, by the Sea of Galilee, and how he cast this vision. And so I think you really lay down the command really, really hard and strong. That's the first part.
Can I add something really quick to that?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think this is another piece that you do really well with that, and some of it depends on the magnitude. But I think it's also healthy as you're talking about this. What's God calling us to do? And it's also showing them, as God's been calling you as the leader, how's he been speaking to me on this, right? Here's how he's been speaking to me in Scripture, and here's how I see God working in me, and I cannot sit still,
right?
Because if I do, then we're not going to be following God's ordained will for our lives as a church. And I've heard you do that multiple times, in addition to laying out the call.
Right.
Also saying, but let me open up and share with you what God's teaching me through all of this too, what he's been speaking to me about. And that brings, I think, a tremendous amount of comfort to the people to know that you're hearing from God as a leader.
It really does. And there have been many times when I have shared out of my quiet time, out of my journal, how God has been speaking to me about the direction of the church. Yeah. And our people always really respond well because they want a pastor that's hearing from God on this. Yeah. And I'll just be really honest that I enter into that with some trepidation because I never, ever want to take what God's, telling me and then use it in a manipulative way or people to perceive that that's the case. So I'm very cautious when I share. But I think because of that, when I do share, they know it's genuine, they know it's real. They can look at my journal. I'm just reading excerpts out of it, but they know that I'm laying it before the Lord and God's speaking. And I think that breeds credibility to you as a leader and calms them. It's just like with my own kids. When we were moving, we only made one big move from Oklahoma to here when they were younger. And I can remember sitting down with my two daughters and I just started reading my journal, what God was saying. Mm-hmm. And it became very clear after 5 or 6, times that God was saying, it's time for you to leave here. And I remember one of my daughters, she just started tears running down her face. I'm getting choked up, I cry all the time now. And she said, Daddy, we got to go. We got to go. And why did she say that? Because internally she did not want to go. Yeah. But she knew that God was leading. And I remember telling her, I said, hey, God's put me as your daddy to hear from the Lord and to lead our family. And one day you're going to do that. He's going to speak to you this way. Yeah. And so she's learning, through that process. And so in some regard, that's a lot like with your church family. They get to, we got to do this because they know you, they love you, and they trust you've been hearing from God in it. And so yeah, it's a really important piece. So I would say the command is really, really important. And then the crisis, that's the middle part of the sandwich. And that is how this is not happening now. There is a crisis. And maybe we're not fulfilling this command. Or maybe there are people that are not hearing the gospel, or there are groups of people in our community that are unreached, or whatever the case may be. There is the crisis, this current reality, and we must do something to correct that. When we stand before God, we cannot just say we were comfortable where we were. Yeah. That we must be about what He's called us to do. And that's kind of this prophetic voice. You think about in the Old Testament, God would bring the prophet in and he would say, this has got to change, And there's that element of this cannot keep going. We cannot keep moving this direction and fulfill God's command, and God will hold us accountable to that. So there's that strong, that's what I referred to in the last episode as burning the house down or setting the house on fire. It's realizing that you think it's great, but it's not great. You think it's fantastic, but it's not fantastic. This is not what God's called us to do. And so it's a call to change. And if you don't really set the command hard, then they're going to say, well, we're doing good. Everything's great. So you got to really set that command and then show that we're not meeting that command. Yeah. And then that gives us the sense of urgency, like, well, no, what do we do then? That creates tension. And with that tension, then there is the natural desire for, well, then what is the answer to this? And so the call then to the new vision is really a solution to that problem. Yeah. And so the call is, what must we do to rectify this problem? And that's the new vision. This is the answer. This is how we will solve this problem and move us forward. And so at the end of it, I've just found many times people will say, we got to do it. We have to do it, And again, this is not a manipulation, because the command is truly the command, and the crisis really is real. And this really is a solution to that, and you're calling people to it. And that if it comes out of a place of passion in your own heart, and you've got a plan to move us forward in that, then the people are going to trust you to move into something new. It's very hard for people in general to move into anything new.
Yeah.
It just really is. We don't like, you end up going to the same restaurant and ordering the same thing, and it's Taco Tuesday, and you're always going to order the 3 taco plate, and we just get into that rhythm. And so to move people into uncharted territory is going to take some kind of crisis and some kind of resolution of that crisis that calls them out to venture into the unknown. And that's so I've just found that great vision usually follows that basic pattern.
Yeah. And I think whether you're cascading communication or this idea of the vision casting sandwich, I think, and this is kind of the heavy thing for a lot of leaders. I know me as a father, even, it can be heavy, is am I trustworthy? Like, I'm asking these people to trust me. I'm asking my kids to trust me. I'm asking my wife, hey, this is the leading. This is where I feel God is leading. And I think, I know Glenn's, we had conversation years ago, and it's like, hey, if you're going to lead your family well, they have to be able to trust you. If I'm going to say God is leading us this way, then they need to know it's authentic. And I think that's what, Craig, you have done very well as being a part of some of those early times of some big shifts here at the church back in the 2008, 2009. Those things were hard things, but we knew we could trust you because you were authentic. You were trustworthy. And again, that sometimes that can be a heavy weight, but I think being genuine and really just sharing your heart and being consistent, I think that's a real good leadership lesson for if you're a leader out there trying to cast vision. Hey, are you consistent? Are you really building? In what ways are you building trust? And then, hey, now let's communicate it. Now let's have that sandwich and really start to cast that vision well. I want to, before we move into this last little kind of handle for us when we're talking about casting vision, I want to take a quick break and just kind of I think this last part is just really, really good. So I just want to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Ministry can be lonely. Now more than ever, pastors are feeling the pressure of raising expectations among their members. Pastors are expected to be stellar preachers, effective evangelists, thoughtful counselors, courageous change agents, astute business managers, all the while steering the church to accomplish its mission. And all of this can be overwhelming at times. Wouldn't it be great to have someone in your corner, someone who understands what you're facing and can help you make the wise decisions that lead the church to make disciples of all nations? Disciple First is here to help. We can provide you with personalized coaching that will help you develop and sustain a healthy movement of multiplying disciples. Our coaching includes a free evaluation to identify your church's health and your current sticking points, also a roadmap for sustained health, and a team of proven leaders that will give you customized counsel to help you move forward. Listen, you don't have to be alone in ministry. Let's start talking today. For more information and a free ministry evaluation, go to disciplefirst.com/coaching. That's disciplefirst.com/coaching.
All right. Well, we're coming back talking about casting vision. Craig, you've really done, and Glenn, y'all have done a great job of helping us understand a pattern for cascading communication and really being a consistent leader. And how do you lead out of with this conviction of what God's called us to do? And hey, this is a crisis that we're happening now. I think, and then really, hey, this is how we're going, and this is why we should be doing this. Just creating that vision casting sandwich. But something you said last time, Craig, as we move into the last part of this episode, when we were talking about crafting a clear vision, you said the phrase vision leaks. So tell us, let's just talk around that. What do you mean by vision leaks?
Yeah, the term is not unique to me. A lot of leadership books have mentioned that, but it just means that people are with you, and then they get busy, and what's going on at the church gets diluted with what's going on in their life at work and their kids and their schools and all that kind of thing. And so vision has to be recast over and over and over again. And part of the role of the leader, when I look at what is my job as a leader here at Cross Creek, what is something that only I can do? I must be kind of the chief vision caster, of the church. I must be recommunicating this vision and saying it over and over and over again in different ways to different groups, so that I'm constantly stoking that fire of vision. And so I think a lot of pastors, they think, well, I preach and I do my meetings and do counseling and all these other things, but they don't factor in, how are you casting vision this week? How are you casting vision this month? And to what groups will you be doing that? I think that would be a worthwhile element to put on. These are the top 4 or 5 things I do as you're leading the organization. They need to constantly be refreshed with that vision. And so there are several different ways that I do it, several different groups or places maybe that vision casting happens. And I want to just give you a couple of them, and you guys can jump in along the way. One is you cast vision in staff meetings. If you have a church staff, it doesn't hurt for you to just remember why we're doing this, guys. Or a great way to do is pick a story of something that just happened, share the story, and say, now this is another life that was changed because we're on this course to make disciples, to multiply to the ends of the earth. So we try to share stories in our staff meeting of things that are happening, and those stories are just a great launching pad to recast the vision again. And there's that inspirational element to it, right? That, man, here's a life that's changed because of that. So staff meetings, team meetings, this needs to be a reoccurring thing, at least monthly. You're intentionally telling a story to cast vision to your staff.
Hey, Glenn, so for you, because you're on the executive team, the leadership team here at Cross Creek, and Craig and your team is casting vision. But when you get down a few layers into the leadership here in your staff teams, what are ways that you do that specifically in your department or in your areas, just to kind of continue to unpack that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ben. And I think, and it's true. I in my team meeting with the guys that I oversee, I have to, cast vision in those certain situations. And it's through storytelling. It's through going back and looking at when we're, we have a different rhythm in our staff meetings. So occasionally that'll adjust based on where we are in the rhythms of some of those meetings. But even like with KRAs, I'm always driving it back to our mission and our vision as to why this is important. You're not just doing this because there might be some incentive attached to it or whatever it might be, but fundamentally the most important thing is this is putting us in front of the world's greatest cause. So again, I really try to expect that to come from them, from their downline teams. Mm-hmm. So what they see me doing, I have the expectation that they're doing the same thing as well. Yeah. Because hopefully they're not only catching it from a modeling standpoint, but they're catching it from a heart standpoint to say, hey, that's what I should be doing with my team. And then I hold them to that too. I give them some accountability. Hey, how are you helping to continue to press that down all the way through? So, again, it's stories, life change. It's when I get together with them on my one-on-ones, again, just continuing to keep that vision out in front of them.
Yeah. It's almost like, when I hear you say that, it's almost like the Israelites when they would recount, they would look back and recount all that God had done, right? It's that as you as a leader going back and recounting all that's God done. This is why we do what we do. Remember what God done. Remember who we were before that. And I think that's the kind of picture I see as you say that of a staff's role.
And a lot of times I'm asked to speak so I oversee, like our kids ministry and student ministries and our adult ministries and all of these different. So when I'm in those environments and I'm asked to say something, guess what I'm doing amongst all those divisional leaders? And I first thank them for what they do as a volunteer, because we couldn't do what we do apart from the time and the effort and energy. But what they are giving is making a difference because it is attached to something greater.
Yeah, that's really so good. And that's so inspiring. So we cast vision in staff meetings, team meetings. A second place to cast vision is just in your preaching. And this may be the easiest thing because you're going to be preaching, just about every week. And so it's a great place to drop an illustration in there of what, as you're preaching through a message that relates to your church and how your church is living out this vision. I know some guys, they will, right before they actually preach, they'll give a little update on how their church is doing and where we're going and what we're doing. They'll do a little mini vision casting message even before they get into the text. So I think you just have to figure out what your rhythm is, but that's the greatest crowd gathered every week. You'd be missing an opportunity if you didn't really leverage that with testimonials, videos, stories, woven into your message about where you're going as a church.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful.
A third one is casting vision in print or electronic form. There may be print pieces that you put out. For example, we do a annual, I guess it's just a big offering really, but it's an annual offering that all goes toward one of our missional objectives. And so this year we're putting out kind of a magazine that tells all these stories in it and all that kind of thing. So anything you can put out that talks about where you're going, and where you've been, what God's calling you to do, what the vision is, how you've seen updates of that vision, that would be great. I mean, even if it was like if your church does a bulletin and you had a little segment in there, little vision updates, and telling stories and how this is living out the vision we call to. These are tremendous things you can do that put things in people's hands. A fourth thing is just casting vision to donors. And I was given this tip by a leader a little over a year ago, I guess, and every once in a while I would take a donor out to lunch, and I would meet with him or her, or maybe it's a couple, and just thank them for their giving, and here's what's going on at the church and that kind of thing. And I was really encouraged to group several of these guys together, and so we do that about every month. We do a luncheon, and these are basically investors and influencers. These are people that are either leveraging their influence in a tremendous way or they're financially contributing to the church. And I'll just invite them in for a meal, and we share. It's very late, very casual. Some of our other staff will be there, and then they all go around the room and just tell how they got to the church, what they love about the church. And then usually will come to me, and I will take about 10 minutes to cast vision. Hey, let me tell you what's going on. Let me tell you. And every time they're like blown away. Man, I didn't know that. That's so cool. That's so great. And I just say, because you give and you serve so much here, I don't want anything from you. I'm not asking you for anything. I just want to thank you because that's making a difference. And I'll share with them the vision and where we're going. And, every time they leave hugging me and thank you, and that just builds over time, right? You think about every month you're doing that, you're just building an environment of supporting and excited about the vision that you're on. And I tell you what, that is something I wish I'd have done, all the years of ministry, but I'm certainly glad I'm doing it now. Number 5 would just be casting vision on special days. I think you should have 2, 3, 4 times a year that you say, we're going to cast vision on this day. For some guys, that's first Sunday in January. That may or may not be good for your context. We have our big give offering, which is all about vision. So we're casting that really hard in November. I'm going to come back in January, kind of New Year, do it again. We're going to do it in June with our night of vision. So those are just some times that we do it. But I think you should literally look at your calendar and say, where are the strategic times in the year that I need to be casting vision about our church and where we're going and celebrating the wins and telling the stories. The more you do that intentionally, then the more you will you'll build that unity and camaraderie around the vision. And then just lastly, you cast your vision on leadership retreats. We take a staff leadership retreat in January every year. And again, part of my role in that is to say, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and celebrating it and thanking all those leaders for giving their all, giving their best to the vision. And so I think these are just different ways. I think it'd be healthy exercise for a leader to sit down and say, okay, what are the environments where I could cast vision. And every month I evaluate, am I casting vision this month? And I look at the month ahead. Okay, where's the opportunities that I could have to really cast vision, right? And as I do that, I'm just celebrating and championing the direction we're going and how God's at work. And so that's that inspirational piece that really helps people to stay attached to it so it doesn't leak out completely. They're constantly getting a regular dose of refills on the vision as we go.
So Glenn, and again, because vision leaks, it's everything, everything else is going on. So Glenn, can you speak to how do you keep that in front of you, even because you're kind of more in the weeds in the day-to-day and things like that, even though you're thinking at an organization level, but again, a little bit more, even more hands-on. How do you keep that in front of you, this idea that vision leaks, and I've got to remind our people, my team, myself, all of that of our vision?
Yeah, I think, one, it's just being continually mindful of why I do what I do, right? And remembering that I play a small part in a larger cause, but that what I do as a leader impacts those, in my downline, it impacts them greatly. So, I think every week, part of my Sunday routine is I'm kind of doing my weekly action plan. Yeah. And I'm looking at, and this sounds crazy, but on my weekly action plan, I have our mission and our vision, kind of all those things together. So it's constantly being reinforced in my mind, and I'm thinking about it. And again, I'm highly motivated around this idea of multiplying disciples. So I'm thinking about it. I'm constantly, I get up thinking about it. I go to bed thinking about it. So that's one thing. Another thing is I'm always trying to read things that are attached to that. So it's constantly keeping it hot-hearted in my own, fanning that own flame. And then I'm asking God, please, Spirit of God, help me stay focused on the right thing, and prevent me, if at all possible. And I know you can, because if I'm left to myself, I will keep me focused on this mission out in front of me.
Yeah, that's really good. And again, as we close out this episode, I really just want to thank you guys for really unpacking just a great pattern of communicating and really putting some handles around what that looks like, how to flesh that out, but then also the reminder, hey, this is not a one-time thing. This is not something, set it and forget it. Hey, this is our vision now. Let's wait for everything to come in. This is something that we have to put in front of us, keep in front of us, reminding ourselves. And I really appreciate this conversation, because I think a lot of people need help in how do I do this practically? What does that look like? And if you're listening today and you're like, I really need to know what that looks like for me. I have a unique context. Our church, you don't understand what our church is like. Hey, reach out to us for coaching. That's what we do, throughout the week, is really just have conversations with other churches and church leaders and say, okay, how can we help you develop a pattern in these places that are unique to you, and to just really communicate vision very well and keep it in front of you. So again, thank you to Craig. Thank you to Glenn for being on the call today and sharing your wisdom from this area.
You're welcome, man. It's a joy to do it, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, and you as a listener, this is why we exist. We really exist to empower and encourage you to make and multiply disciples like Jesus. So we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy.
Thank you for listening to the Disciple Making Leader podcast, brought to you by Disciple First. We hope today's episode has been both helpful and challenging in your journey to becoming a disciple-making leader. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure you hear the next episode. And if you have a moment, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep making Jesus the model for your life and ministry.